Hey everybody, Adam here with WhipWorks, and this is the WhipWorks How to Make a Bullwhip series, where I show you how to make a professional quality bullwhip. In the last video, we completed our 6-plait layer and we wrapped it in some artificial sinew to give it a nice bolster at that transition, and now we're ready for our 10-plait layer. For our 10-plait layer, we're going to need the exact same materials as we used in our 6-plait layer. We're going to need our paracord, athletic tape, some vinyl tape or electrician's tape, and some artificial sinew. There's a couple new things to show you in the 10-plait layer, but it's very similar to the 6-plait layer. So let's get started. All right, so I'm just trimming my strands for the 10-plait layer here, and it says here we need 2 at 54 inches, 2 at 66, 2 at 72, 2 at 83, 2 at 89. And again, I like to trim it with an extra ½ inch. So here is our 10-plait layer. So just like with the 6-plait layer, I'm gonna start with a strip of vinyl tape. This one needs to be a little bit longer. So I don't know, this is like 4.5, maybe 5 inches. Just eyeball it. And then just like before, we're gonna get it flat on here. Ah, come on, stick. So we have our vinyl tape in place, and now, just like before, we're gonna go for an even amount of each length strand on each side. Or not even, but the same amount of each length strand on each side. So in this case, I'm just starting with my longest and then going down, but it doesn't matter what order you put these in, just so long as you have the same amount of strands on each side. And again, I'm being very gentle here, kind of readjusting the paracord so that there's as little weight on that vinyl tape as possible. And sometimes, here, I'll show you a little trick. I'll take another 1, 2, 3 block here while I'm grabbing my other strands, and that'll keep those in place. Because sometimes, some paracords, oddly enough, they aren't as they won't stick to the adhesive as well as other strands. I don't know if they have like some sort of a coating on them depending on the dye or what, but some of them stick to the vinyl tape better than others. So here's our last 2 strands. Awesome, we did it. No strands fell off. So now I'm gonna hold it in place. We're gonna wrap our vinyl tape around. Nice. Nice, nice. And then we'll take our 1, 2, 3 block, line the vinyl tape, the edge of the vinyl tape up with the edge of your work surface, your table, and then completely cover it with your block of wood or your 1, 2, 3 blocks, whatever you're using. And then I'll clamp it in place. Oh, by the way, these are called 1, 2, 3 blocks. They're used in woodworking or in metalworking. This is what they typically look like, but I like the ones without the holes because they're heavier. And they're just 1, 2, 3 blocks because they're 1 inch by 2 inch by 3 inch. And they're just super useful to have laying around. Just a little heavy object. Okay, so again, we're gonna split these, and I will do one final check here to make sure. So I'm going down here, and just make sure that all 5 of these strands are different lengths to make sure that I did it correctly. So there's 1 strand, 2 strand, 3 strand, 4 strand, 5 strand. Yep, they're all different lengths, so we know that we have the correct strands on each side. So just like before, I like to take the right innermost strand and go over that left innermost strand. And we are getting started here. Next up, take our left then, the next left strand, and that goes over. The next right strand will go under, over, just like that. And then we'll go under, over, there. And then over, under, over. And we're just continuing this diamond pattern. Over, under, over. It's like weaving, really. The diamond pattern is very much like weaving. So under, over, over. Oops. Making a mess here. Under, over, under, over. And our last strand, under, over, under, over, under. Nice. Boom. And then we'll clip it in place. Now we're ready to stick this thing on top of our 6-plat layer. Same deal as with the 6-plat layer. Gonna snag a couple inch, 2.5, 3 long inch piece of vinyl tape here. I'm gonna grab our diamond plat start. And, okay, now this is kind of important. I am going to put the new 10-plat layer, that vinyl tape, about halfway up of the 6-plat layer's vinyl tape. And I'm gonna wrap it up. Oh, forgot to, this is kind of an important step. Have that there. Now I'm gonna wrap this on, and I'm gonna circle it around. Get that nice and tight on there. And then we're left with this, and I can remove that clip. Now again, I'm going to look for the strand that needs to go over. Now this one on the right needs to go over, so that's gonna be our first strand. Now this left strand over, 1. And our next right strand goes over. This is kind of a confusing part here. It gets a lot easier once you get the correct 5 strands on each side, if that makes sense. Right now it's kind of backwards. So we're getting it into a good starting position so we can actually plait. So we're gonna go over, under 1, over 1. Excuse me. Under 1, over 1. Over 1, under 1, over 1. Over 1, under 1, over 1. Under 1, over 1, under 1, over 1. Under 1, over 1, under 1, over 1. And over, under, over, under, over. Boom. Then I like to get it in the vise. Same as with the 6-plat layer, I like it to go up to where the vinyl tape, the showing layer of vinyl tape ends. And keeping this nice and straight here. We'll straighten it out here. It's not super straight at the moment. And get it nice and tight in here. Whew! And then we can start our actual plaiting pattern for the 10-plat layer. Now, I could go easy for you, but I'm gonna give you a little advanced tip in how I plait this. Instead of going under 2 over 3, under 2 over 3 on each side, kind of like with the 6-plat layer. I like with that odd number of strands on each side. I like to plait under 2 over 3 on one side and under 3 over 2 on the other side. It keeps the whip a little bit more even and it gives the whip a little bit better flow. For these left-facing strands, I'm gonna go on ahead and do the under 2 over 5, or under 2 over 3. Okay, and there's my first plait of this layer. All right, and then we're gonna take our back right-facing strand and we're gonna go under 3 over 2. And again, or not again, I don't know, maybe I'm saying this again. I'm probably repeating myself a ton through this process. I'm gonna take that back left-facing strand. We're gonna go under 2 over 3 and kind of straightening this out as I go once we have it in the vise here. Under 3 over 2. under 2 over 3. Under 3 over 2. Under 2 over 3. All right. Now we're getting nice and straight. We're seeing this pattern starting to form here. Nice and cozy. So we're going to keep plaiting this 10 plait pattern. And according to our blueprint, we're going to be plaiting the 10 plait layer up to 24 inches. And then we're going to start dropping strands. Things are going to get a little complicated when we start dropping strands, but don't worry, I'm going to walk you through it. It's very doable. See you in a bit. Here we are. We're about to level up our whip making game. Here we go. Ooh, I just bumped the mic. Okay, so I'm gonna measure from the end of our handle down, and you'll see I have these clipped off here. So here's that 24-inch mark. As our blueprint tells us, at 24 inches, we drop a strand. We start dropping strands. Now, we're not going to drop both strands on each side. We're going to drop one, we're going to plait a couple inches, and then we'll drop the other. And then we'll keep plaiting. I'm going to continue down. So this is our 24-inch mark. I know that I want to drop my first strand. I'm going to go down 6 inches of 8 plait. According to our blueprint, we have 6 inches of 8 plait. And this is where 30 inches here, this is where that 8 plait section is going to end. And I like to mark it so that I don't need to remeasure it later. Okay, but that's just a little tip. Now, if you can see here, my shortest strand on the right side is all the way down. It's the furthest down strand. I am going to drop this strand. Now I'm going to have to trim this strand later. So because it's black on black paracord on black paracord here, what I like to do is tie a knot in the end so that I can identify this strand and trim it later when I need to trim it. So here's our knotted cord, our knotted strand, and I'm gonna keep plaiting. Okay. A little bit of something on my finger there. And we're just gonna keep plaiting. And make sure not to plait that knotted strand. Keep that knotted strand dangling. Keep an eye on it. And we're just gonna plait around it. So now, so here's that dropped strand. I'm gonna kinda loop it on top there. And then I'll show you how I kind of lock that strand in place here. So I'm going to keep plaiting down. I'll show you a little trick. Keep on plaiting. Okay. So if you can see here, where's our dropped strand? This is where our dropped strand would have been if we kept plaiting with the dropped strand. And I'm going to plait this last strand here. And now I'm going to take that strand, which has been plaited over several times now, and I'm going to tug it down this way. Not this way. I'm going to tug it down this way. And it just kind of locks that strand into place. And then I'm going to take that strand with my forefinger and I'm going to get it back bunched up with the rest of the paracord. Okay. So now you'll see on this side, we're doing under 3 over 2 still, like we were before. But on this side now, it's under 2 over 2, which is our 8 plait pattern. Now, I'm keeping an eye on where I'm going to be converting to 6 plait, and as I get closer, I still need to drop this other strand on this, because right now we're doing a 9 plait pattern, and we still need to get down to that 8 plait pattern. But doing it this way, I find if we stick in 9 plait for just a couple inches, and then we convert to 8 inches, we're going to get a nice taper. Again, I'm probably confusing you here with this little tip, but because I was doing under 2 over 3 and under 3 over 2, I'm actually going to drop this next strand a different way. Now, here's our shortest strand on this side. This is the strand that we're going to drop. Now, first I'm going to knot it so that I can find it later when I need it. There we go. Got a knot in there. Now, instead of dropping it when it's in this position, like we did for the last one, what happens if I drop it here, when I plait over it from this side, I'm going under 3 over 2, but eventually that's going to turn into under 3 over 1 because I've dropped a strand, and under 3 over 1 doesn't work. It needs to be under 2 over 2. So to make it stay at under 2 over 2, or to get this under 3 over 2 pattern into an under 2 over 2 pattern, we're going to drop the strand by taking our short strand, and instead of going under 2 over 2, we're just going to go under 4. And we're going to lay it to the side. There you have it. So there's our shortest strand that was up here. We just went over 4, wrapped it around, and now it's dangling over here. And then, sticking with the same side, so we just dropped the left-facing strand, we're then going to plait the next left-facing strand under 2 over 2. And then we're going to take the next right-facing strand, and instead of under 3 over 2, it's going to go into under 2 over 2. And there we go. And then we're going to plait down several strands, and then I'm going to do the same thing that I did with the right-facing strand that I dropped. I'm going to take this left-facing strand, and I'm going to give it a nice tug away from the whip, just to keep it nice and in place. Now, we have to trim in order to encourage a good taper. We now have to trim that strand that the first dropped strand. Quick note here, I trim strands differently in my 10 plait layer than I do on the 16 plait layer, okay? So just keep that in mind when I show you how I trim my dropped strands in the 16 plait layer. It's different. So identify the strand, the first dropped strand, and you can tell because when you pull on it, there's more resistance on it because it's been plaited over more times than the strand you just dropped. And then you're just gonna trim it, just kind of eyeball it. I like to trim the first dropped strand, about 1.5 inches to 2 inches past where I dropped the second strand, if that makes sense. And this is one of those things, this is a taste thing. This is something that you will learn. What gets the best taper for your whips, So now I just keep going. And we're just gonna keep plaiting now down to this marked spot where we're gonna start dropping to our 6 plait section. All right, as you can see here, we're getting down to that marked section. I'm not gonna drop the strand. Here's our shortest strand on the right, which is kind of the first one I like to drop. I wanna do one more complete round of 4, so I'm gonna remove the clip. And now I know, as I keep plaiting here, the next time the shortest right facing strand is at the front, that's the one I'm going to drop. All right, so now that shortest right facing strand is now in the front. So just like before, I'm going to go ahead and mark it by tying a little knot in it. There we go. I've got a little knot in there. And then I'm just going to plait over it. We're just going to keep plaiting, kind of keeping an eye on that dropped strand. And we're going to give it a tug here as soon as we get down a couple plaits. 3. I like to give it a tug when it would have been the next strand. Oop, so there was the first time there. I went under 2 over 1 there. As you can see now, on the right side, we're establishing that under 2 over 1 pattern, while on the left, we're still doing that under 2 over 2 pattern. All right, so now I'm gonna give that dropped strand a tug. Yeah, tug it to the right. And now you can see it's kind of out of place now. So now I'm gonna go ahead and tug the next strand. There we go, shape it back the way that we want it to be. And now I need to trim that last dropped strand, and I like to trim them so that it fits snugly kind of in between other dropped strands. So here's a drop, or here's one of the core pieces, here's one of the core pieces, and here's the dropped strand. I'm gonna go ahead and trim it in between those two. So now you can see we have a nice taper. We have short, middle, long there. And that is a nice little taper. I don't have it marked where we're going to tie off the 6 plait section. We're gonna measure that as we get closer to it. So right now we're just eyeballing it for when we want to drop our other, our left facing short strand here so that we can get down to that 6 plait pattern. But in the meantime, I'm just gonna continue doing under 2 over 2 with those right facing strands, and under 2 over 1 with those left facing strands. Okay. And I think the next time that the short strand of the left facing section is in front, I am going to drop it. All right, so that left facing strand, that shortest left facing strand, is now in the front, and I'm gonna go on ahead and drop it. First thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna tie a knot in it so that I can find it. And then we just keep plaiting over it. So I'm gonna plait a couple. I'm gonna plait until I wanna give it a tug. Now, be sure to, when that dropped strand, make sure that that dropped strand stays dropped. It can sneak back into your plaiting pattern very easily, so be sure to keep it out of the way, so that then when it's that first time to do that over 2 under 1 pattern, or under 2 over 1 pattern, you can easily identify it. That maybe made no sense. Trying to put words to these concepts, these things that I think about all the time, is really difficult as I'm trying to help you with your whips. So now I'm gonna give this dropped strand a tug. There we go. And I'm going to drop the other strand, the one that we already dropped, and I'm gonna trim it just past this core piece here, just maybe an inch past there. There we go. And yes, now we just keep plaiting up till that 36-inch mark, when we can trim our extra strands and then bind bind it up. Just kind of keeping an eye on this, and I think we're getting close to that 36-inch mark. So let's give that a measure and see if we're there. And when I'm measuring, measure from where the end of the steel rod is. Measure from where the end of the steel rod is, not from where the vinyl tape is. You can kind of see that that's moving, so you can kind of feel where the steel rod ends. And that's where you want to measure from. Okay. Perfect. We're just at that 36-inch mark right now. We're trimming 6 strands again, as you can see, at 4/12/20 and 8/16/24 for our 10 plat layer. But there's this 7th strand from the last one, the last strand that we dropped of the 6 plat layer or the 6 plat section of this 10 plat layer. Now I like to trim this halfway to like 60% of what our first drop strand is going to be, our first dangly strand, which is going to be 4 inches here. So I'm gonna go ahead and trim this last dropped strand at 2.5 inches. And now I can start actually trimming my strands. So I'm gonna start with all of my left facing strands first. And our chart says 4/12/20, so I'll grab my shortest strand. That one's gonna be cut at 4. And again, I like to add that little 1/2 inch just for good measure. Our second shortest strand, trim that at 12 inches. And our longest strand on the left is 20 inches. There we go. And then our right facing strands, shortest one is at 8. Next is 16. And the last one is 24. Awesome. And now we got to bind this up just like we did with our 6 plat layer. And tie this on here. Kind of loose, well, not loose, but just a placeholder. And then we wrap it around itself. And again, I like to start every groove, then every other groove, till we get to the bottom. And then we do our tight bind, just like with the 6 plat layer. I'm just gonna get this nice and taut. Oh no! Oh, I did the exact same thing last time. And then once you've done that, like 6 or 7 passes, we're gonna get the clip out of the way. And then we're gonna give all these strands a healthy tug. And I also like to give the sinker cord a tug. Awesome. Then we'll grab our piece of Kevlar string or extra piece of artificial sinew, whatever you have around. And again, these are going to be a little bit more spread out this time, more spread out than this tightly bound section here. And we'll go around 6, 7, 8 times. I like to do kind of one more at the top to really lock it in place. Again, not again. I keep saying again. That's probably so annoying for you. I'll hold it in place with one of my fingers. I'll trim it with my other hand. Weave that through. And give it a tug. Boom. I'm gonna give this a roll, and then we can get our last bolster on there so that we can plait our overlay. Now that this is all rolled, we can get on our last our last binding on this transition. Zoom out a little bit. You can see on the blueprint here that we are going to bind our 10 plat layer with artificial sinew, and then we're going to bind it with athletic tape after we've done the artificial sinew. I do not have it marked where we stop binding with the artificial sinew. We're just gonna eyeball it, but you know, further down than we did with the artificial sinew on the 6 plat layer. So I'm gonna tie this on. Lock itself in place. And doing that same thing as before, where I like to go, to save material, I like to go every other until I get to 1 inch before the transition. At which point, oh, we gotta go a little bit further here. So at that 9-inch mark, yeah, at that 9-inch mark, we'll start going in every groove, binding it. Now, I'm pulling it pretty taut. I'm not pulling it as hard as I can on every single wrap around here. I'm being firm with it, because this artificial sinew will snap, and you're really getting the bolster from the amount of wraps, not necessarily the, you know, the individual tightly wound wraps. You just want to get a lot of wraps in there. Okay, so I'm going to keep going every groove in this kind of X pattern, down a little bit past the transition. And then I'm gonna go back up to the transition to get a bunch of passes right at that transition point. So I like to measure down to 10 inches so I can see here that like this square was at my 10-inch mark. So I'm gonna go on ahead and keep an eye on that square as I wrap back up, and I'm gonna make sure that I really cover that square and everything around it. Ooh, ooh, I thought that was about to snap. Made a sound on me. I'm getting down to the bottom of this this coil of artificial sinew, and that's when it can get the weakest, and when it's about to snap on you. So I'm being real careful here not to pull too tightly, but still pulling tight enough that you get a good, you know. I'm giving the worst advice. Pull tightly, but you can't pull too tightly. And I'll just check my work here, make sure that that 10-inch point is kind of the center of my work. I can do a little bit more above it. Okay, cool. And now we're gonna get back into our every groove. We're gonna go every groove up until, I don't know, again, we're just eyeballing it. You can kind of feel where the bolster or where the loaded core stops, which we know is 8.5 inches up from that transition point. So you could measure it if you wanted to. And I think I want to stop this at about like I want to stop this just past where the core ends. So like we'll maybe go up to like 9 inches, 9.5. And it's just a taste thing. How far up do you want it to go? So I feel like for a 6-footer, this is a good spot to go then to every other groove. So you'll see here, now I'm doing once every 2 grooves. Do that 4 times, then I'll go once every 3 grooves. 1, 2, 3, 4. Boom, and I think that's good. It's a little less than I was saying, so maybe like 7 inches up. I'm gonna go one more with it. Cool. And then I'm gonna do the same thing I did with the 6 plat bolster. I'm gonna flip it 180 degrees. And then fill in all those sections that I may have missed. Awesome. And then I'll go every third, but we're not doing the X pattern this time. We're just going kind of that single helix pattern back up because we don't want to overbind it. So I'm going every 3, and as I get closer to that transition, I'll start doing the X pattern again, doing every other, you know, just we're creating that taper. We're creating the flow of our transition here. And now I'm gonna give a measure to make sure, find that 10-inch mark. Okay, so it's right there. Just checking for spots that, there we go. That looks good. That feels good. Kind of see how that flows. And we're gonna go up the handle here. And guess what we're gonna be grabbing here in a second? I swear. Who'd have thunk it? You probably wouldn't have guessed that one of my most used tools in whip making is a spare piece of string. All right. And same deal. I'm gonna wrap this around itself. Or wrap this around that loop, rather, around that spare piece of string. All right. Then again, hold it with the finger, trim it, establish the loop, lace it through the loop, pull it through. Works like a charm. Okay, I'm gonna take it out. Got my athletic tape. As per the blueprint here, bind athletic tape over the top of that artificial sinew. And we're gonna go up quite a ways with it. But again, with these bindings and with this artificial, or with taping and with binding with the artificial sinew, you're just kind of eyeballing it. You're gonna build your kind of, I don't know, your own style. How far you want to go with it. How tight of a transition do you want? Do you want it super stiff for that extra accuracy, or do you like it kind of floppy so that you have more kind of versatility with it? You can. There was a burlesque performer who had to crack. She ordered these 4-footers from me, and she had to. So I'm going to go up to, sorry, just like an inch past where I bound it. But let me finish that story. So I sold this pair of 4-footers to this burlesque performer, and she wanted the transitions to be super floppy. Like, she wanted them to be not stiff at all because she was cracking them on a stage, and there was a ceiling, and there was a bunch of stuff that they could get wrapped around, and she just wanted them to be super loose at the transition. And I did that for her, and she really liked it. So sometimes I'll even kind of mix up my recipe if I get a specific order from a client. But so I'm gonna go roll just this center part. I don't need to roll the whole thing. I've already rolled it, but I am gonna roll where that center bulges, and then, holy buckets, we can start doing the most exciting part of our whip, the overlay. There's our 10 plat layer done in the books, and now we are ready for our overlay, the most fun part of whip making, in my opinion. If you have any questions about what we went over in this video, please feel free to comment down below. I'm gonna try and answer as many questions as I can. If you found this video helpful, please give it a like, and if you want more whip-related content, feel free to subscribe. And as always, happy cracking.